Hello, everyone. We are live on the air for our January hangout for the patrons, and this is for everyone who's a regular donor on Patreon. And I've also added one at Makerspace, makerspace.com/ShaneDK, because I've lost a couple of patrons because they didn't really like the way Patreon was doing any, so they requested some other way. So I set something up there, so we'll see how that goes. Let's see. So far, we've got Darth. Say hello, Darth.
Hey.
Are you there? Right. And Pipsqueak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. And Pipsqueak. Oh.
Hello.
And just another ANCAP who is checking out a video for us on the Tide Pod Challenge, because we're sitting here trying to figure out if it's fake news or not. Are people really doing it, or is it just a scare? You got anything there, Just?
Looking through it, I'm having trouble finding that video. I'll look back in my history.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it just sounds to me like the sort of thing you hear that comes up every day, that all the kids are supposedly doing, and they're getting all the parents in an uproar about it. And usually it's BS stuff, like they were supposedly doing something to Listerine to distill out the alcohol so they could drink it and get drunk and stuff like that. It's just, generally.
I think I heard in the 80s people were doing satanic rituals at daycares or something.
Yeah, there was actually one over in the eastern part of the state where I live, North Carolina, in New Bern. There was a daycare that, oh man, they got shut down, and the owners just got thrown in jail, all sorts of trouble, and it was years straightening it all out. And I think that was really the first time where the concept of false memory syndrome came to the forefront, because everyone we like to think of our brains as, tape recorders. They can perfectly play everything back. No, you never remember anything properly. It always changes. And so that's what was happening there. They just kept asking these kids were there satanic rituals, and they kept saying, yeah. And what they were really doing was implanting these false memories, and false memories just get more and more ridiculous over time, because they were talking about things like, animal sacrifices. And I think about the time when they're asking, what animals were being sacrificed. And of course they're kids, so they're going to say elephants and giraffes and stuff like that was being sacrificed. That was where everyone said, no, come on.
Yeah.
It just sounds slightly ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. I found one weird example, but I couldn't find any more other than one example of this. So,
what was he actually doing? Was he actually like eating the Tide Pod, or what?
He almost swallowed it, and then he coughed it up.
Yeah.
But he was also doing things with borax bleach. So I don't think that and boiling it and then drinking it. So I don't think it's a very good representation of the entire teen population.
No, please do not drink bleach. If you didn't need Miles Power to tell you that, don't drink bleach. Like, getting back to the false memory.
What happens when you mix ammonia and bleach? What happens when you mix ammonia and bleach? I've heard that can be pretty bad.
Oh, isn't that chloroform?
Not sure.
I'd have to look it up. But yeah, it's not good. But I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name. He was the journalist that got in trouble for saying that that his plane got shot at when it was someone else, when he was overseas or something like that. I forget his name. But I think we talked about that on the podcast. That is exactly the kind of thing that your memory can do to you, because I think he was honestly remembering that. But it's just that after years of thinking over what happened, the details can get changed around.
Huh.
And there's
Oregonians
Go ahead.
Sorry. Oregonians having to pump their own gas is probably the funniest thing I've seen in a long time. Like all the complaints.
Oh man, they hate that. What? I have to pump my own gas?
No, you don't. If you really don't want to, pay someone else to pump your gas.
Well, and that was the thing when that self-serve pump started around here. You know, they were like 20 cents cheaper, you know, to go and pump your own gas, because otherwise you had to pay something. I mean, they come out, they'd pump your gas, they'd wash your windshields, you know, have the little squeegee thing going on. I mean, but you got to pay someone to do that.
Yeah.
So it's cheaper to pump it yourself. And to pay at the pump, you don't have a clerk. I mean, the pay at the pumps, they stay open even when the convenience store is closed. So we're getting some things going on in the live chat. And one thing that Frederick Voltaire Bastille, I've got to love that name. It's something that I haven't really looked into, the FISA and hashtag release the memo. So I might have to get back to you on that. But Simon Petrikov wants to know, do trade secrets require a state? So the way trade secrets work as opposed to patents or copyrights is like the secret formula for Coke. Coke keeps it a secret, and they only tell the employees that need to know about it, and then they swear them to secrecy contractually. And the way it works is if one of them leaked the formula, they could go after the person who leaked it, but they couldn't go after anyone else. You know, if you got the formula and started making your own, they couldn't do anything about it. So, I mean, it's really up to them to police it. So, I mean, yeah, you could do that without a state as long as you had some way of enforcing contracts where you could go after the actual leaker. But, you know, this is where you get in sticky stuff like with the Julian Assange thing, because, you know, he's releasing all of these leaks. He didn't actually go in and take it. Other people took it and he just released it. Legally, you're only supposed to be able to go after the people who take it. But once it's out there, anyone else can, you know, unlike copyrights or something like that, where someone pirates something, he gets in trouble, and so does everyone else who shares it. Trade secrets don't work that way.
So what would you say to the idea that if there was no copyright, the big companies could just swoop in and take everyone's idea, and no one would make any money off their own ideas?
Isn't it kind of the opposite? I mean, because that's kind of what's happening now, especially with all these patent trolls. You know, someone invents something and some patent troll that got a whole bunch of random there was one guy, I might have to explain this, so I'm going to try not to get into a whole bunch of tech garbage. There was one guy who claimed to have patented elliptic curves. And elliptic curves are just, it's actually a fairly simple equation, like, you know, that big or something, but they make this nice little elliptic curve, and it's used in cryptography, and there's all sorts of elliptic curves. Well, this guy claims to have a patent on every possible elliptic curve out there. So even ones that haven't been found yet. No, I don't think so.
How could you even make that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Why?
Well, it's just, we talked about this on the podcast. The patent office has just become a rubber stamp organization. As long as you pay the money, it's just a assembly line. I mean, what you have is...
Are you a Star Wars fan?
Well, what you have is the exact opposite. Yeah, when I keep bringing up these examples, like, you know, Germany in the classical music era, or, you know, Shakespeare and Kit Marlowe and all of those guys with their plays, they didn't have copyrights on them. Shakespeare didn't come up with Romeo and Juliet. Someone else had come up with it, and he did his version. And, you know, oh, Kit Marlowe has this play over there, so, okay, I'll do my version of that play, and now here's the new version. I mean, you know, that's what was going on.
You a Star Wars fan, Shane?
Not really a big fanboy fan. I mean, I watch the movies and I like it, but I don't really, you know, I haven't really thought that much of these last two. The only one I'd really say was a good movie was Empire Strikes Back, but I'm more of a Star Trek Doctor Who guy than... Yeah, I fall on the Star Trek end of the Star Trek Star Wars thing. But Babylon 5 is really good. Everyone should check that out. I think, what is it? Go90.com, I think, is the website. It has every single episode of Babylon 5 for free. You go and watch it. Good show.
Frederick.
What all do you subscribe to? Do you have like Hulu and Netflix and all that, Shane?
What's that?
Do you have like Hulu and Netflix, and like, do you have any other services you get online to watch content?
Yeah. Well, my wife really likes PlayStation View. I don't think technologically it works on that great. I just started a 30-day trial of Amazon Prime, so I'm going to see how that goes. And I have seen some of the stuff on there that, you know, I had to do separately, but like, you know, they've done this really good version of The Handmaid's Tale, and they've got a second season of that coming up. Neil Gaiman's American Gods, I think, was Amazon Prime, and well, Amazon streaming really, but Amazon Prime means that you can watch all of that, kind of like Netflix. You know, you pay your $12 a month, and
so Frederick Voltaire Bastiat asked, which is better, the Austrian or the Chicago school?
I'd probably have to say the Austrian school. I mean, that's really, I don't know. I mean, I don't like having like, here's this category of people and I'm going to agree with them in everything they do. I mean, the Chicago school has some good stuff coming out of it. You know, I'm not going to poo-poo them, but you know,
yeah.
Usually when there's a conflict, I've gone on the side of the Austrian school.
Mm-hmm. Voluntarist Consumer recently got 1,000 subscribers.
Okay, I'm trying to think of who that is.
He has the symbol with the skeleton head and the red suit.
Oh thing. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. He also recently got a Patreon at my request, so he's not going to be advertising it, but and he also has a Discord now, so I guess he has everything now.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd really like to see something set up where, I mean, I guess this is kind of the idea behind BitChute, but and a couple of others, DTube, none of them really seem to be ready for prime time, but something that's kind of Patreon-like, where you just pay with cryptocurrency and then you get, you know, a month's access to the videos or something like that. I guess give them time to work out the technology.
Hopefully they'll get there at some point soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the cryptos, God, this last week or two, the cryptos have gotten creamed. They've gone down like 20%, all of them, not just Bitcoin. Yeah. Dash, I think, is recovering. But man, if you look at coincap.io and keep an eye on that, man, I don't know what happened. But
do you see the government? Do you see the government outlawing cryptocurrency as a means of money transfer in the United States?
I see them trying. They're not going to be able to do. How are you going to shut down Bitcoin? How are you actually going to do it?
Yeah, you
can't stop it like for like black markets and stuff. But like if like Kroger wanted to accept Bitcoin or something, like they could put a stop to that pretty quick, right?
Well, yeah. They could stop it that way, but I mean, they couldn't stop people trading in the stuff. I mean, they can't stop people from sending heroin around everywhere when it's a physical product that has to go. This is just bits going over the internet. Yeah. And Salvage Edith wants to know what's the best cryptocurrency at the moment in your opinion. I'm still liking Dash. I think they've gotten a lot of stuff right. And later this year, they're working on technology they're calling Evolution, which should make it a lot easier to do things like recurring payments for a Patreon kind of setup. Litecoin seems pretty good. Bitcoin Cash, they seem maybe like they're starting to have the problems of the main Bitcoin. You know, it's taken a little longer for the transactions to go through, and the costs are going up, although nowhere near what Bitcoin is. But I don't know. It's just kind of.
Do you know why they split into two? Do you know why they split into Bitcoin Cash? The reason behind that?
Yeah. So basically, what happens is every 10 minutes, or so, it's estimated, but it kind of adjusts everything, so it'll happen about every 10 minutes. The Bitcoin network solves a block, and that block is all of the transactions that have been queued up to that point. Well, this wasn't in Satoshi's original design, but at some point, the Bitcoin core developers put on a 1 megabyte size limit to the blocks. The blocks could only be 1 megabyte. That means that if you have more transactions queued up than will fit in 1 megabyte, then it has to wait for the next block. Now, I mean, that's not a problem if it's just regular peak times, but I mean, things are queued up so much, you're going to wait a week for it to go through. And so what happens with the network is people jockey for positions. Satoshi really wanted you to be able to do the Bitcoin transfers for free, but you can actually pay more of a transaction fee and kind of go to the front of the line. Well, now everything's so queued up that you got to pay, I think, like $30, you know, just to get a good position in line to have a good chance. And it just, I heard a good analogy. It was kind of like a fast food restaurant that can cook your food in 10 minutes. One of them can serve 100 people at a time, and the other can serve 800 people at a time. And that's what Bitcoin Cash did. It forked off and it put the limit at 8 megabytes. And so what happens when you get 300 people queued up? Well, the bigger restaurant can get them all through. The other have 200 people left, and then you get another 300 showing up. Well, then they're going to have to jockey for a position and all that. So it's just there are so many transactions that people are wanting to do. And so the fork happened. It wasn't just Bitcoin Cash splitting off and doing a bigger block size. Bitcoin Core wanted to put in something called SegWit, segregated witness, where you have ways of having a bunch of transactions that are kind of off blockchain over here in a separate ledger, and they're represented by a single transaction. And that was supposed to be this big solution that kept them from increasing the block size, and it didn't work. So,
yeah.
And now they're working on something called the Lightning Network, which sounds interesting if it ever materializes, which, you know, it's kind of vaporware so far.
I've heard that Ethereum is a peer-to-peer thing where you can host websites that can't really be shut down. Is that accurate?
I don't know a whole lot about it. I know it's for smart contracts. There are ones that have, well, they're called DAOs, DAO, digital autonomous organizations, where you can do things like contracts and maybe websites and other things like that. But I don't know. I'm not a cryptocurrency expert. I don't know a whole lot about it. So Simon Petrikov says just double the size of the block for Bitcoin to 2 megabytes. It's interesting because they were supposed to do that. The way they kept a lot of the miners and everyone else supporting the main Bitcoin chain was say, hey, you support us, you get SegWit, and in 2 months, the main fork, I think, was August 1st, and then towards the end of October, there was supposed to be this doubling of the blockchain to 2 megabytes. It was called SegWit 2x, and then the core developers reneged on it. And then they lost to people over. And it's kind of interesting because it's really the miners that control the network. Well, you've got mining software that you can set up, or even websites you can just go to and do it, where you can automatically switch between mining Bitcoin and mining Bitcoin Cash, depending on whichever one's more profitable. So,
why did Ross Ulbricht get like basically a lifetime sentence for creating a website?
Because he did it where government couldn't regulate it. I mean, that's really just the thing. And I mean, yeah, people were selling drugs on it, and oh my God, we can't have that. But they were making out like he was this big drug kingpin. And I mean, for so long, it was precedent that websites cannot be held liable or responsible or culpable for anything that their users do. But that's basically what they did with Ulbricht. And so they got him the double life term there. And Simon Petrikov in the chat, you're completely right. Bitcoin is pseudonymous, not anonymous. So you have that long little Bitcoin address there. And then behind that, you have a public key. And then you have the private key, which you keep to yourself. And so you can create a bunch of addresses based on the public key. But as soon as you use them in the blockchain, that kind of exposes the public key. Now, you can always create another public key, just another private public key pair, and just keep doing it. In fact, there are what are they called, deterministic wallets. It'll kind of do that automatically. Just every time they'll, and there's not really much of a way that you can tell, okay, these addresses all go together, unless they have that initial seed that creates it all, which is what you really want to keep keep secret. And this is if you have like the Jax wallet or the Coinomi wallet, and they say, do this backup phrase, and they give you a whole long list of like 20 words or something like that to write down somewhere.
Have you heard of the IOTA currency? It's supposedly transaction fee free.
Yeah, and it's something like only $2 or $3 for 1 million IOTA. And something, I don't really understand this, something, it has something to do with IoT devices, Internet of Things, as ways for them to do something together. I haven't really read into it, but there's just so many of them out there, and so many of them have just, so many new ones have just jumped up. What's this new one called? Zencash or something like that? Now, there's just a whole bunch of new ones that have popped up. So Simon Petrikov is predicting that the anonymous ones will rise above the pseudonymous ones, and you may be right about that. But
Killian currency.
But I mean, I think there's always going to be, you know, like, here is my Bitcoin address, send me donations, you know, the kind of thing that I do. I'm mainly taking Bitcoin Cash and Dash, although I do have the altcoins link, which is kind of cool because, you know, I have Shapeshift, which will actually go from one coin to another, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think there will always be, I think, a place for people to say, okay, here's this one address you can send me to, and you know, then of course people will be able to look in the blockchain and tell how much you got. But I always thought it was pretty cool, the idea that you could like bill your clients and you'd print out an invoice, and each invoice would have a brand spanking new Bitcoin address, you know, with maybe a QR code for them to scan it in. And just the fact that you received money on that address means that you know which invoice to apply it to. That's pretty cool.
What are you willing to give away some of the things that you're going to talk about during your planned response to the video response that Mr. Dapperton mirrored?
Well, I haven't actually watched the video yet, so yeah. Although I will say I want to check this out when Dapperton gets it up. The reason why Dapperton mirrored it is because the guy did some animation for him for free, and so Dap said, "Okay, I'll mirror this video for you just to you know, kind of pay you back for that." So I mean, I'll check that out, and I mean, if he does, I've seen the animatics for it. It looks pretty good so far. So
it does,
and Dap seems to be pleased. So I mean, if it's good, then I'll probably start out the video saying something like, "Hey, this guy's a good animator. If you want to hire an animator, go to him." But then there's this other thing we'll talk, you know, that kind of thing. I'm always happy, you know, to give people credit where it's due. As much as I've really come to loathe Steve Shives, I still have to get him credit for his series An Atheist Reads. I mean, that is still just a well done series. Yeah,
the video, what it's about is that it goes through and it says, and it has a critique of the lack of belief atheist, which seems to be a common theme, where they say, oh, they just don't have any beliefs. People aren't defined by their lack of beliefs, or they're defined by what they believe, and it's just a confusing term. And
well,
then
that's true. I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's a good point. But, yeah, it's a good point, but I personally think that but the place he put it into, he was putting it into it to make it so. Then the next point he made, which really made it so that it was no longer really a good point, is he said that he defined Christians as people who lacked a belief in atheism.
Yeah, I don't think it works that way.
Yeah.
Simon Petrikov, let me interrupt you just a second. Simon Petrikov says anonymous cryptocurrency is totally unregulatable and immune to hackers. Those last three words are really dangerous, Simon. Hackers are very creative people. Yeah, and it's amazing.
I remember when they were saying that about Windows XP. I remember when they were saying about Windows XP.
Steve Ballmer up there being he should have been a pro wrestler. He missed his calling. He was up there doing all this screeching about Windows XP is the most secure operating system ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then continuing, one of the next things he does is that he talks about your video on libertarianism and property rights from first principles, and says that when it gets to the point where you talk about burden of proof, he says that Christianity is his first principle, and that's his response to it.
Yeah, I don't think it works that way. There's a difference between a principle and a claim about reality. You know, those are two different things.
In order to make a claim about empirical reality, it has to have a basis in empirical reality. Either that, or it has to be completely showing that any claim that about empirical reality other than the one made is contradictory in nature.
Well, and you've got a problem, because what happens if there's something that, if your first principle is every word in the Bible is true, and then you run into something that contradicts the Bible, how are you going to deal with that contradiction? I mean, if that's your first quote unquote principle, then you have to deny that fact, which means you have to deny all the evidence that supports that fact, and you have to deny all of the ways that the evidence was collected, until at some point you're denying the experimental method itself. And then where are you?
And then if you're saying that everything in the Bible is true, and then you find two contradictions in the Bible, you would have to determine which one is right, and then necessarily whichever answer you have would necessarily contradict that. But of course, I doubt that's how he would define it. But he doesn't really define what he means by his first principle, so we can't really understand exactly where he's coming.
Yeah, I gave a bunch of examples of that in a recent video, like how Judas died. There are just two completely incompatible accounts. And it's not even the case where, oh, well, this one account had, A, D, and E, and this other account had B, C, F, and G, but you can put them together and you get the correct one. No, they're contradictory. They both cannot be true.
Has anyone calculated the lowest possible tax rate that would produce the highest possible revenue to the government?
I think that's one of those things that's going to be a moving target that's somewhere you can't see. Yeah, but I mean, empirically, as long as the tax rate is below 10%, then revenues as a percentage of GDP will go up and down with it. But you get above that, and that's when they start leveling off.
Would people like to help me with my look at my script quickly, because I found the screen share thing and I can just share it. I have the tab open.
We are public, if you want to expose yourself like that.
I don't really care.
Okay.
I don't care about that. If someone wants to use my ideas, they can do whatever they want. So
cool.
Yeah.
And I have no idea why my housekeeper has a blue dot on her head. I don't know where that's coming from. All right, I think I've got it where your screen's going to stay up.
Yeah. Okay. So I just start with the basic understanding of various things. I'm going to add stuff to that. I have notes on this, and then the structure, a basic structure of an argument, and then I have.
By the way, before you get too far into it, tell us what your channel is.
Well, are you asking like the name, or
how can we find it?
I'm using the. I haven't put any videos on there yet, but you can find it. It's going to have the same name as this. It's just going to be just another ANCAP, which is why I put the label there. I have this weird symbol to start with, but All
right, so go ahead.
So I start off by explaining the basics of I'm going to start by explaining the basics of libertarianism, and then explain why that would mean that anarcho-capitalism is the only consistent set of beliefs based upon that. Explain why homesteading is legitimate, because I've seen lots of things about that. Explain how inheritance is legitimate, and anything else relating to that is legitimate, and give some examples of various things. I have a few other notes on that. This is the general structure of an argument that I found works relatively consistently. If you start with the basis of the NAP and self-ownership, you can easily put them in a corner. And usually, I found the best way to get the NAP and self-ownership is by saying is by using the example of why is government allowed to do something that you can't, like in the Learn Liberty video I remember from a while ago, where at a college
Sorry, I'm late.
where at a college
Johnny.
where at a college they had they asked if you're allowed to shove people in your basement if they don't donate to a charity of your choice. And then they opened up the second one and said, well, is government allowed to do that? And that type of thing I found works. And then go through that.
Show the reality of, you know, taxation being theft and what happens if you don't pay your taxes, things like that.
And I've also been putting post-it notes in my copies of some books, and also putting some random marks in some PDFs of some books, because I plan to put lots of various arguments for anarcho-capitalism in syllogistic form, put them all in one place, and then have videos proving the premises of these arguments, and cite all the sources for all of them, in order to, and through all of those, I plan to have every month have a video where I respond to the various critiques and comments. And that's the general structure I've started with. Any comments upon that?
This is, if I were writing that script, I think at this point I'd be thinking making it a series rather than just a single video.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. That's a good thought.
If you don't want to saddle people with a 2-hour-long video.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. 2-hour-long videos are no fun. Well, okay, I think that
Fun and thing about video games.
Well, it's just the fact that it's the sort of thing that's gonna make someone, you know, take one look at the time. You know, 2 hours and 6 minutes. They'll just go to the next video. You know, regardless of, I mean, they won't even, you know, you won't even have a chance to hook them. They won't even click on the video.
And Shane, what are your comments upon the liberalist movement?
I've kind of been busy with other things, so I haven't really. I'm not even that really interested in it. But yeah, I mean, I've kind of heard a couple of things twice removed of the kind of things like Sargon of Akkad has been saying. But I mean, I can't really speak to it myself. But
okay.
Simon Petrikov says, are most ANCAPs usually atheists? That seems to be the way it goes. The two seem to go together pretty well. I'm actually thinking
I know a lot of libertarian Christians. So
I'm actually thinking of doing a video of why anarcho-capitalist isn't really that great of a name, to be honest. But you know, it fits perfectly if you understand what the definition is. But you know, there's all sorts of when you're trying to communicate to someone, you can't really go up to someone on the street and say, "I'm an anarcho-capitalist," and have them make the right assumptions about you. So, whereas voluntarists would
just say to all these people that we know the way. The way is capitalism.
Well, voluntarism, I think is a much better word for it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Because it really describes the basis of it, rather than being, we don't like the government, we like this capitalism stuff, and therefore we're anarcho-capitalists. Instead, we want all relationships to be, all association to be voluntary, and therefore, because of that, we are both anarchists and capitalists.
Yeah, but I mean, capitalism is about economics, and I mean, there's other issues too, because like Singapore has been like #2 on the Economic Freedom Index for like decades behind Hong Kong. So they're really free economically, but if you're caught like chewing gum in public, they'll cane you or something like that. They've got these really crazy laws about things you're not allowed to do.
I've heard that people in these economically free.
Yeah, libertarian purist recommended by Simon Petrikov in the chat. Again, I don't think people will know what you're talking about. And also the name purist, it's kind of like a way of saying like, oh, I'm better than you or something like that. You know, there's this arrogance behind it, which I think libertarianism should be the exact opposite. It's one of the most humble things that I know of, because it's saying, hey, we don't know the best way to do this or that. We just want to set people free to try different things and see what works.
I am more pure for libertarian than you. You are.
I'm more humble than you are.
Guys, you're both humble, okay? I don't want any infighting. Thank you.
Yeah, I've heard people in these economically free countries, if you poll them, they actually don't really realize why they're well off. They tend to want more controls in economics.
Well, I mean, I can see it as kind of a thing like, the anti-vaccination movement. You didn't really get anti-vaxxers in the 1940s. And I mean, my mom's told me about, growing up, she got classmates that had, mumps and measles, and, they were crippled for life. They were brain damaged for life. They were blind for life. They died, I mean, these were not these harmless little childhood illnesses. But now that we've had vaccines for so long, people don't have, they haven't personally seen the horrors that can come from mumps and measles and things like that. And so they think, oh, well, they're just these harmless childhood diseases. And, vaccines, we've got to, don't have, too much too soon, and all their little mantras that they have like that. Yeah. I mean, it's just the fact that it's been so long since anyone's actually lived it. You really have to be this kind of millennial raised by a soccer mom, upper middle class, to be an ANCOM. How many poor ANCOMs do you know? How many ANCOMs are there in trailer parks? Tell me that.
I don't know.
How many people from Venezuela will actually tell you that socialism is great?
Yeah. After I finished
Somalia.
Somalia, what?
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I was in a forum where I was debating with someone, and then in a different section of that forum, there was a similar section. It asked, what is the greatest empire in all of history? And I put down Somalia during the stateless period, just for fun.
These states,
but you see, no, that proves that capitalism doesn't work, because it couldn't undo all of the damage created by socialism and become exactly like America in 13 years.
These states do not know the way, Shane, but in time we will teach them the way.
Do you know the way to San Jose?
Oh, I walked right into that one, didn't
I? One of my teachers, who has a bunch of different economics textbooks, is allowing me to borrow one of Paul Krugman's economic textbooks. And in the later sections and various things, I'm going to compare it to some other books I have, and I'm going to do a page-by-page critique of things and send it back to him just for fun.
It's pretty funny, because I don't know if any of you have listened to the Contra Krugman podcast. But I mean, it's hilarious. It's Bob Murphy and Tom Woods. And it is amazing how often they can refute Paul Krugman's article in the New York Times for that week by using Paul Krugman's textbook. Because he just completely goes against everything
Someone get me the link to that podcast. Stat.
David R. relates the anti-vaxxer effect I was talking about child labor laws only after child labor went down significantly. Yeah, that was the only time where you could think that, hey, maybe child labor is not a good thing and we should, pass regulations against it. Because if you're in 1800, or if you're in present day Bangladesh, and someone says, oh, we got to stop the children from working, they'll say, are you crazy? We'll starve. We don't want our children to work. We're not terrible parents. We've got no choice here.
It's funny. It's like anytime you throw out the possibility of freedom, they try to come up with every single excuse they can think of to say why it wouldn't work. It's like, well, what about this over here? It's burden on proof is on the status to show that government is necessary, right?
Well,
and
even
I think
then,
they
some
When we show them proof, they'll just go,
Well, they also seem to
It's
have
like
this idea that if you want to go back to the economic policy of the 1850s, then that must mean you want everything else about the 1850s. You want slavery back. You want people to live the way they did in the 1850s, without air conditioning and refrigerators. Why do you want to go backwards like that? It's like, that's not the point.
Yeah, it's like every single. There is so many times where they just bring up the most extreme of examples.
Yeah, and the ironic thing is so many things about what they say, and I think this is a pretty good trick to kind of examining something. If someone gives you like, oh, well, it's the law, and maybe the law is bad and needs to be repealed, but until then you should obey the law. Take it back in time, take it back into the 1850s when there were the Fugitive Slave Acts, take it back to 1600 where you had the drawing and quartering of heretics. Always, whatever policy you're thinking of, take it back in time a few hundred years and see what atrocities you could use it to justify. And if you can use it to justify, things like, executing heretics, it's probably not a good idea.
and that means you will be verbally spit on by everyone in this voice chat.
And
Like-
this is the thing that I've made this point about Charles Dickens. He saw the way people were living and working in London. And, so he, had this idea of, oh, well, this is a bad thing. People deserve better. Well, maybe so, but he had this very idyllic idea of how people were when they worked on the farms, because he had never actually gone to a farm and seen for himself how much hard work it is. What's it like working, when it's, 90 degrees out and sunny or 30 degrees in the cold, how dangerous it is working around these big, strong animals and all this huge equipment that they're pulling and things like that. And you kind of think there's a reason people were leaving the farms to come to the city. As bad as things were in the city, it was better than where they were from. People are not stupid. They're not that stupid at any rate.
By the way, I have established my love of Smite, yeah?
What is Smite?
Oh, it's basically take your pantheon's worth of mythology's finest, put them in an arena against each other. It's a multiplayer online battle arena game based on 9 different types of mythology: Hindu, Chinese, Egyptian, Roman, Celtic, Japanese, Mayan, and Nordic.
My money is on whichever one has the best control of gravity.
Wheelix.
That's the superpower I would want, because think of how many other superpowers you would get. You would get flight. You get super strength just by making the thing lighter. You get super speed because what you're doing is warping space-time, so you could warp it around you and go somewhere really fast. Just sit down and just think of one thing after another. Invisibility, or the ability to see around corners. X-ray vision, whatever. Control of gravity could get you all of that.
Shane.
Does anyone
Does
anyone hang out?
Like comic book nerds.
What's wrong with being a comic book nerd?
Does anyone that's hang out go to like local libertarian groups, and what's been your experience with that?
I don't know what you're talking about, Darth Vega.
Like local I've got a libertarian group in my county. We meet once a week.
In my experience, they generally go one of two ways. You've either got a good group that can get some stuff done, even if there's only 3 or 4 of them, or you've got a bunch of conspiracy theorists and nothing gets done.
I mean, like a bunch of Alex Jones types.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, Fiji water. Enough said.
Perfect.
Pure wine. It's probably not where you live, and it sucks to be you. Good stuff.
Oh, you just had to take another stab at me. Come on, Shane. Give the sport a break, will ya?
I'm in North Carolina. We have good sodas here.
What?
I don't know.
Actually,
What's
I'm
your
not
favorite
how-
soda, Shane?
I'm not sure how far Cheerwine goes. I think one of our local sodas just went national, and I can't remember which one it was, but I don't think it was Cheerwine.
We
I don't
need
know, I
to
was in
start putting some
America
black
last
market.
year. I was in America last year, and I gotta say, your soda sucks.
You
We need to start selling some
Jeez,
black market
platypus
sodas in
is
Seattle.
neurotoxin-infused ale stinger or something, mate?
All right, I think Darth has been trying to get a word in edgewise. What you got to say, Darth?
Sorry, I was just saying we should probably sell some black market soda to people in Seattle. Probably make a pretty penny there, huh?
You know, it's funny, if you watch the first Smokey and the Bandit movie, that was about going to, I think, Mississippi or somewhere to buy Coors beer and smuggle it back east because it was actually illegal to sell it in this region of the country.
Oh, interesting.
And Big and Little Enos were throwing a party, and apparently Coors was this really great beer, and so they had to have some. That's what it was all about, and that's why the police were chasing, because they were smuggling Coors beer.
A few
What's
months
your favorite
ago,
soda, Shane?
What's that?
What's your favorite soda, Shane?
Well, I've always been more of a Pepsi guy than a Coke guy, and then there's some of our local things like Cheerwine and Sundrop.
Okay, I'll be quiet now.
Better not be talking mess about Sprite, Darth.
a few months ago, there was an article on the Mises Institute titled "The Voluntarist Constitution," and what it did is, in the format of a constitution, tried to outline and constantly repeat various things relating to how exactly a voluntary society might work. It's a somewhat interesting article. I'll just put it into the chat over here. Right there.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get all these links together and get it into the show notes, the little description down there, wherever it is. All right.
So we went from talking about economics, speaking out about comic books, to talking about soda in the span of like 15 minutes.
That's how these hangouts go. I never know what we'll be talking about.
Welcome to group conversation. Next subject change in 15 seconds.
Well, I mean, with these Patreon hangouts, I'm just going to let you guys, pick the topic and talk about whatever you want to. So, I mean, we can meander around all you want.
As I've been reading Man, Economy, and State, I just got to the end of the direct exchange section, and at the very end, Murray Rothbard talks about debt collection and theft. Shane, what's your position on how debt collection would work in a voluntarist society?
I don't imagine it would work too differently than it does now, because we don't have debtor's prison anymore, except for things like, I think the only two examples are if you don't pay your taxes and if you don't pay child support, then they can actually put you in jail. But otherwise, like, it is about trying to collect the debt, and I don't even think, it's really about confiscating stuff anymore. I mean, unless you get a judgment from a court, but most debt collectors are just, trying to see, okay, let's work with you. Let's get this, so you can get your credit score back up. You can get your reputation back. So,
Simon Petrov has a question in the live chat saying, "Hey Shane, why are some libertarians the most paranoid and conspiracy theorists?"
I think the only reason we have that reputation is because there aren't that many of us overall, and so they kind of stand out. But you can look at Democrats and Republicans and find plenty of them. There is no shortage of them anywhere. They're just all around. And by the way, you're talking about Man, Economy, and State. I hope you've got the one with Power and Market, because Power and Market is really good too.
Yeah, I have that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's one of the ones they have for free at Mises.org.
Yeah, they do. They do have it for free. For this specific one, I decided I wanted to get a physical copy of it because it was a really interesting book, and I'm not able to have a PDF available to me at all times, while I can have a physical book available to me at all times, and I just wanted to be able to carry it around with me. So
I think the only physical book I've actually bought in the last 2 years is the latest edition. I don't know if it's the third or fourth or something like that, of Mary Ruwart's Healing Our World. So, because as of yet there isn't an ebook version of that, so I bought the soft cover. That's a really good one if people haven't read it. And I think she still has the first edition online for free. You got to sign up for her newsletter, but what do you want? It's free. You know, come on. You can give up an email. Make up an email address. Use one of those. What's that?
Have you read any books, Shane, or do you plan on writing any books?
I'm actually working on trying to get a collection of my short stories together. I want to make them available on Amazon. Amazon won't let you give them away for free. You got to charge at least 99 cents. But I think if you do that, they kind of get lost in the sea of all these other 99-cent books. And Amazon, I think, really wants you to charge at least $2.99 for it. And I'm thinking, just from what I'm looking around, if I'm going to charge $2.99 for this, I need at least 50 or 60 pages. And I think I've got like 35. So I've got a couple more. These are just kind of like ideas I've had like in various directories in my hard drive for a while. And I'm like, well, you know, like one was like no way I was going to be able to afford to make it into a short film. So I made it into a short story. And, you know, just some other ideas I've been trying to get together. So,
any specific genres or just all over the board?
It's mostly science fiction and political satire. It's kind of all over the board, but they're kind of the science fiction and political satire kind of thing. I've got one that's very much like a cross between Franz Kafka and George Orwell. You know, I've got another one that's more pure science fiction, very little political commentary, some religious commentary. That one, actually, I posted it online back in like 2002. It's called Voyage of the Dotirian, so you can probably still find it out there. It was selected for use in this one Android app that gave you a whole lot of books, and then I think that Android app went under. So I don't know if it's still out there anywhere, but it'll be available in this. And it'll be Creative Commons, so I'll probably put it up on Pirate Bay and places like that as well.
Simon has another question. He has another one. It says, can people form convent communities, something like a gated community, but bigger, with exile, the worst punishment for violating its rules?
You got a problem with exile, because the only way you can exile someone is if you own the property and they don't. So it's like, okay, I'm going to move into this gated community, but I don't own my house, and you can kick me out at any time. I don't see a whole lot of people going for that, you know?
If anybody wants a politically neutral, well-made book on early American history, I would recommend. I personally have been reading *The Rise of American Democracy: Jefferson to Lincoln* by Sean Wilentz. It puts in all the information of the various political perspectives at the time without actually taking a political stance on the issues.
Democracy sucks except for all the others.
Spit on him!
What was that author's name again? I'm going to try to get this into the show notes.
Sean Wilentz. The last name is spelled Wilentz.
Okay, and it's Sean S-E-A-N or S-H-A-U-N or what?
S-E-A-N.
Okay. All right, that'll be down there somewhere.
Shane, after Mr. Dapperton made his top 10 ANCAP YouTubers list, what would yours be?
I'd have to go through my subscriptions and look. Definitely Dapperton, Hoodie Demon. What's Capitalist Kid calling himself now? Atomic ANCAP. It'd probably be pretty similar to Dapperton's. The guy whose name I couldn't think of earlier had the floating skull. What was his name?
Voluntarist Consumer.
Oh, yeah. So
I was thinking Lord Killian for a minute there. I don't know why though.
No, this one, his thing is just like he's got the top part of a skull for his head, and then a bunch of hair, and then the rest of his avatar.
You know what's,
So
you know
Adam
what's
Kokesh
really
got
been
arrested
grinding my
again.
gears these past few weeks?
I heard about that. He got arrested like an hour after filing to run for president. So that's like very bizarre timing. And I was reading like about the reports coming around about it was just like weird stuff. I
Sorry.
don't know what's going on there.
I heard he was pulled over for speeding, and then they found drugs.
He was pulled over for what?
Speeding.
Oh, yeah.
Speeding. And they
Because
found drugs.
I know they said they found drugs, but it was like they had pulled over for something weird.
But seriously, you know what's been really cheesing me off? All these
What's that?
millennial types who thought it would be a good idea to ingest those little Tide Pods you do for your laundry. Hey, morons. You know what Tide Pods are useful for? No,
We were talking about that earlier, and I don't. Is that happening? That really sounds like one of those things that's just completely a fake scare or something.
Does it sound like it's fake when it comes out of my mouth to you, Shane?
It's just you kind of get a rhythm of these things over the years, like, oh, kids are taking this, weird product and distilling it to get drunk on, or they're taking, like, what was it one time? Nerds, I think people were supposedly grinding up and snorting and getting high on. Get high on nerds? How would you get high on nerds? I mean, every now and then there's just these crazy things coming out that people are supposedly doing, and like one time there was actually a call to ban Sharpies because apparently a lot of kids were banning Sharpies and getting intoxicated. Sharpies will not intoxicate you. They don't have anything like that in them.
If you want to laugh.
What's that?
If you want to laugh, check out What About Mouthwash on YouTube. It's hilarious.
Okay.
Robot Agorist asks, what about Little Tom, Shane?
What about, why not let me get back to the chat. What about Trudeau? I don't know what that is. Trudeau Tom.
Trudeau Tom is a YouTube channel. I think he was commenting on your list of ANCAP YouTubers. He's the one who created the video about logic that I was talking about near the beginning.
Oh, okay. I think that's the only one I've seen him on. I don't even think I watched that whole video.
Yeah, he does some good videos where he has one comparing the Keynesian and Austrian business cycle. I know I've watched a couple times.
And to clarify, Pipsqueak, there are some markers that you can get high sniffing, but not Sharpies.
Well, yeah, but everyone knows how ridiculous Dilbert can be. I mean, Scott Adams came up with the idea for the movie Downsized that's come out recently. Dilbert did that first about 3 years prior. Like, downsized employees, and they literally shrink to like tiny people.
Oh,
Just
okay.
as a joke.
Why do I have a feeling Ashok was one of the first ones? Little tiny Ashok going around. The intern.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. People calling him ASOC. It's actually pronounced Ashok. And I'll get that link in Darth. You guys are going to have to keep the chat going while I'm pasting in links here. We're having dead air.
Seriously. We need a real life Darwin Awards.
Aren't the Darwin Awards real life anyway? I thought that was the point.
Are they still going? I haven't actually checked out that site in a while.
I'll check. Open bear. I'll check.
The Darwin Awards, for people who don't know, are awards given out for people who do the human gene pool a favor by removing themselves from it. And usually it's like doing something incredibly stupid and dying from it, but castrating yourself is just as good. So, it's a celebration of how stupid people can be.
Anya. Wow. All right. I'm going to link this in the chat.
Oh, God. What is it?
The Darwin Awards website. I'm sorry, guys, but I have a really, really sadistic sense of humor when it comes to this sort of thing.
It used to be just DarwinAwards.com, I think. Is that where you are?
It still is.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll get that in there.
I did that for you. Saved you the trouble.
Well, I still got to get it all together to put in the description after this posts properly and isn't just 7,200 volts and a dim bulb. Okay, you gotta love some of these.
Yes, some of the names are great. 503 server overload.
It kind of reminds me of this picture I saw.
Having a bad day. After posts.
And apparently this was real. UK TV is this satellite TV thing in the UK, and apparently this was real. It was a server farm, and there was like just a regular like oscillating type fan you'd get at Walmart that was duct taped to a box and set behind the server, and there was a notice posted to it that says, "Please do not turn off this fan or you will take down UK TV." Apparently they were relying on this fan to cool the server.
Simon Petrov 39 says, and I agree with this man, 1,000 Ways to Die needs to be revived. Glorious. 1,000 Ways to Die, for those who don't know, is that fictional people based off of real life happenings accidentally or idiotically remove themselves from the gene pool.
So basically the Darwin Awards. He also says that the Tide Pod footage is a false flag. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's a bogus scare.
I think it's just Darwin working his magic.
Hey, yeah, every now and then just someone to troll people just comes up with that and is like, hey, do this. And then you see who eliminates themselves from the gene pool. Okay, good. We've got that. We got that cleaned out. We can do a better job with the next generation.
God, I
Heartless.
hope so. Huh?
Just heartless.
That is the kind of down thing about the Darwin Awards, because, I mean, these are real people who have lost their lives usually, and they have people who are mourning for them. Yeah, so.
Yeah. That's the only downside I can gather.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of thing. It's like if I think about this every now and then, because I remember exactly where I was. I was driving on South Boulevard in Charlotte when I heard about Phil Hartman's murder. And he was like, his wife killed his son and killed him and then killed herself. And I'm like, okay, so now you've done all that and you're dead. And it doesn't matter to you either way. So why not skip the first two parts, just off yourself and not take anyone else out with you? And why you got to take other people out? That's just senseless.
Do you believe in evil, Shane?
I don't believe in like an evil force, like the Star Trek energy being that, goes into people and makes them do bad things, which was a great Star Trek episode, by the way. Day of the Dove, great Star Trek episode written by the great Jerome Bixby. But I mean, I don't think it's actually like that, but I do think that there are things that people do that are evil. I mean, obvious example, the Nazis, all the stuff they did, not just killing the Jews, but all the experiments they did, or all just the starvation of them and everything, just to be mean to them.
I learned about that, and
yeah,
it shows how much of a good heart I have. Yeah, I may be a statist, but I'm also a pretty chill guy. As Shane here
and
confessed.
also, if you talk about sadism, if you go back to what the Marquis de Sade originally wrote about, it was stuff that was consensual, because, like the BDSM stuff, there were people who do that, and, it's not a problem because it's what they both want. But now the word has kind of come to mean, doing bad things to people you don't want it to, and really terrible things like, torturing them and killing them.
Slightly changing the subject. I found a video last night called "You're All a Bunch of Socialists." And that's part of the title. But and it was about how apparently in 1947, Hayek called a group of notable intellectuals of liberalism into Switzerland, and this included both Mises and Friedman. There ended up being a big debate, and Mises stormed out of the hotel room and said, "You're all a bunch of socialists." It's just somewhat funny, even though in some ways, looking through the comments, a lot of people said on this video, and a bunch of people said, "And he was right." So I think it's kind of funny.
He usually was.
You know, I've been seeing a lot of videos on the video to debunk thing, and I'm thinking, are you people just legitimately trying to make Lord Killian's skeletonized existence miserable at this point, people?
Oh, I've got plenty of material to work with, you know. I'll say that much. I'm not going to have a shortage of videos. I have a shortage of time. I think tomorrow I'm finally going to get all my kids back to school after the snow days and the teacher work days and the doctor's appointments, and because everything got delayed from the snow, so now everything's so I've been busy.
Do you mind sharing what you actually do besides YouTube, Shane? Do you work somewhere?
Well, I work from home, but I mean, I do have clients that I get work for. I was just one of these last week before the snow came in. I went out and worked at this one place and helped them with their computers. And it was one of the cases where the computer just wouldn't turn on. And I diagnosed it on the phone. I'm like, yeah, it's hosed. You need a new computer. And so they got a new computer and they were like, okay, well, we need you to move the files over. And I'm looking at them like they're both HPs. I bet you there's nothing wrong with that hard drive and I could just move it over to the new one. And I did it and it just came back up. It ran, you know, its little updates and stuff like that, but it was fine after that. And they were really pleased about that. But yeah, that was.
Not to mention, he also hosts the Bogosity podcast, where you can occasionally hear my magnificent voice.
So, I mean, yeah, I do things like that, but, you know, there's also the family thing. And I mean, since I do work from home and Heather doesn't, if she's working and someone needs to pick up the kids, it's going to be me. So I need to be able to, you know, get out on a moment's notice, like if the kid's sick and I need to go and pick him up. That's kind of me doing all of that.
It's funny you bring it up because my dad works from home too. Yeah. He's also a computer buff, but unlike you, Shane, he is completely hopeless at everything else. There's things that I know he doesn't know. There are things he knows I don't know. It's just a vicious cycle.
How does one get to be on the Bogosity podcast?
Ask me. That's pretty. I think pretty much everyone who's asked me to be on the Bogosity podcast has been on at least once. So
see, also yours truly. Not to toot my own horn here.
I would do it. I would do it. I just don't have a lot of things to say.
Yeah. And usually the way it works is, I mean, we do it over Skype. I've tried a couple of times doing it over Discord, and we've always had technical problems with that. But it's usually either Fridays at like 6 Eastern or Saturday at noon Eastern, and we get it recorded, and then I get it all edited together and packaged together. I usually have it up for the patrons about 4 p.m. on Saturdays, and then it goes up at 6 p.m. on Sundays. So that's basically how it goes.
Yeah.
Shane, what's your favorite terrible statist argument?
Oh boy. Shane, your mic's muted, pal.
You're muted, Shane.
Unmute. Okay, I think it's unmuted. It wouldn't unmute. I was in here hitting Control D like a madman. All right, yeah, my favorite bad statist target. There are just so many bad ones. I don't know if I can. I was going to say like one that's really contradictory, and there are so many of them that are really contradictory.
That's because you guys know where I'm going with this.
Yeah. Oh, and this is a good thing from David R. In real life, nobody sees themselves as the villains. Yeah, everyone is the hero of his own story. Hitler did not see himself as a monster. And if you're writing a work of fiction, no matter what it is, a short story, novel, film, TV show, or whatever, and you've got a bad guy who's just evil because he is, it's bad writing. You know, the difference between the good guy and the bad guy is whose point of view you're telling it from, mostly. So, I mean, whatever your bad guy is, whatever terrible stuff he's doing, there's some way in his mind that it makes sense for him to be doing that at the time. So.
Yeah.
That's why I enjoyed Alan Moore's The Killing. That's why I enjoyed Alan Moore's The Killing Joke.
Yeah.
I actually have a physical copy of that, by the way.
So do I. Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah.
I saw the movie they had made.
Oh, that's the one with the two main Batman VAs that I dig. Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, yeah?
Yeah, Mark Hamill, they were saying, would you be willing to come back and play the Joker again? He said, okay, but it has to be The Killing Joke. So
but then Arkham Knight happened, then Justice League Action, then Killing Joke.
But they did like this prologue to it, which wasn't bad, but the writing wasn't, up to par as the last part, which is taken from the comic and mostly Alan Moore's writing. But I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on visually in the first part that was really very good. And then at the last part, the writing was really good, but it's like they didn't really get the idea that when you're reading a comic, each panel is just a quick little motion in time. And I get they wanted to put the comic on the screen, but they would like have the characters like standing where they were in the position they were in the comic panel for the whole duration of the conversation, not just having it as a moment, having them dynamically moving them around. And so, the writing was much better, but visually, I don't think it was quite as striking. So I think that was a misstep.
But then again, it did have Ray Wise of Twin Peaks fame.
Yeah.
So all's forgiven in my book.
And I'm sorry, if the Joker is going to do a musical number, it's going to be a huge showstopper, not like that little, little thing they did there. He's gonna pull out all the stops. He's gonna
the Joker. What do you want? I mean, since the 90s, the Joker has always. Also, I had the misfortune of seeing Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
I haven't seen it yet. From what I heard, it's basically a ripoff of Empire, the way the previous one was a ripoff of A New Hope.
Thank you.
It's more a ripoff of all three of the original trilogy at once.
And look, I'm not mad at Mark for reprising the role that got him into the Hollywood history books. I'm really not. It's just Rian Johnson.
Now, which one's Rian Johnson?
Rian. I mean,
the director.
Yes. Excuse me, I need to get something and collect myself.
I can't blame Harrison Ford, though, because when they asked him if he wanted to come back for that revival, he said, only if you kill off my characters. Can't really blame him for that one. Although the guy that plays Kylo Ren, I heard he was really good in that. And I mean, he was pretty good in the first one, too.
People complaining about
what was your favorite movie of 2017?
Like, you realize that Harrison Ford's always hated that character, right?
Yeah. Favorite movie of
what was your favorite film of?
What was The Martian released in 2017?
Hang on, let me look it up.
If so, then The Martian. And I love the book too. The book's awesome.
It dropped 2015.
Sorry, when people talk, I can't really tell if my voice is coming through or not.
Yeah, we're getting lag. I keep trying to tell it to do the low latency streaming, and it doesn't always work that way. David R says, my iPod fell into some used cooking oil. Do I need to get a new iPod? Can you get a new iPod? What are you still doing with an iPod? Let's go out.
Jeez.
Who has an iPod
That
now?
is your life, David. iPod touches are where it's at, baby.
I looked in that after I saw that for a forum to look up that, and the forum was from 2007, I think. And also I'm trying right now. I'm working on my channel art based upon the little image from earlier. What do you think I should add to that?
Yeah, if you're talking about the script you showed us earlier, I'm still thinking the thing to do is just make it a series. And I don't know if anything really needs to be added, but just flesh everything out as much as you can, and outline it from the start. Say how many videos there are going to be.
And then specifically that image I had there, it's too small to add as channel art, and so I'm trying to expand it now, but I don't have much on there. If I expand it and it's just a white background, and I don't know what I should add onto there. Should I just have it be?
Yeah, I don't know. People need to understand less is more. And I mean, if you've got that extra white space around there, because I mean, web pages have just gotten so busy now. Yeah, I mean, and YouTube just kind of sticks everything all over in every column of the page. If you've got a big area of white with just that everything, that might be the one that catches someone's eye.
Maybe.
That's what it was like in college, whenever our student groups would do things, you'd have these bulletin boards up in, the liberal arts building and places like that, and where anyone could just post up the flyers for whatever party or whatever it was they had going on. And of course, people were printing things out on these like neon green and hot pink and everything else, and just all these colors. And what I would do is I would post it on a regular white sheet of paper, put it right in the middle, and that was right where your eye went to, because it was the only white thing on the board, and white is the brightest, of course, so that's really where your eyes go to. That's like when you're talking about when you're talking about taking a picture and doing things. You wouldn't do it like I do now, because I have this light back here behind me that's really, really bright. And if this were going to be like a picture someone would see, their eyes would go right to that light instead of the subject, which is what you're wanting to see. So I would say, make your subject the brightest part of it, because that you're attracted to the bright things. So.
What would you think would be the worst? Sorry.
I played through Sonic
What would be the worst consequence?
Go ahead.
What was that, Darth?
What would be the worst consequence of reinstating net neutrality, in your opinion?
I think mostly it's just the case of I think we're finally at a point where everyone is saying, no, okay, we need to get competition in for local ISPs for broadband service. But I mean, all net neutrality is going to do is just get in the way of that, because it's one more barrier that they would have to get past.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Shane, because I've been spreading that video at net neutrality. Preaching about like wildfire. And
preaching.
Oh my God, all the fear mongering about it. We didn't have net neutrality for 24 years of the web. And we had net neutrality for 2 years. And what happened in that 2 years? Were you more free online at the end of those 2 years? Could you go on any website you wanted to and say whatever you wanted to say without running afoul of some hate speech law somewhere or anything like that? No, we were far less free.
And I think we mentioned hate speech laws in Germany last week.
Or was it a week? Oh,
I love how people think that if the companies can do just whatever they want, and the consumer will just go along with it.
Well, that was what someone was saying on my YouTube channel today. Just a commenter was like, "Oh, you want companies to be able to shut down websites? How is a private company going to shut down a website? Multiple governments can't even shut down the Pirate Bay. How is Comcast going to shut down? They can't shut down a website.
Nope.
And I mean, one thing we've
seen,
even when governments do try to use the DNS system and stuff like that to stop it, people come up with ways around it. What was it? Where was this?
Do you think?
I don't remember what country it was, but somewhere they were. It's one of those countries where they're really putting the screws on the internet, and people were spray painting all over the place. 8.8.8.8 and 8.8.4.4, which are the IP addresses of Google's public DNS servers. And all you do is type those into your DNS fields, and you just go right around your local government's DNS restrictions because you're not using your local government's DNS anymore.
Oh, Robot Algorithm.
Have we made any progress on?
What's that, Darth?
Have we made any progress on DNSSEC? I haven't really heard much about it recently.
I think the main thing is just trying to get people to adopt it. And then there's DNS Crypt, which is a different thing. And you kind of need both. DNSSEC means that you're getting the actual authoritative data for that domain name. DNS Crypt gives you an encrypted connection to it to hide it. But I think the thing they might be going towards now is DNS over TLS. TLS is transport layer security. It's what gives you that HTTPS security with the little green padlock and all that on your websites. Doing that over DNS to help hide what you're doing there. So I mean, the people are working on the problem. The problem is it's just inertia. DNS from the beginning has been unsecure, and it's really difficult to get people
I think Firesheep is to blame for a lot of the HTTPS transfer, like Facebook and stuff.
What is
Firesheep? You remember Firesheep?
I don't remember that one, no.
It was basically a little tool you could pull up at a coffee shop and look at everyone's Facebook profiles because they were sending cookies over unencrypted connection.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you gotta watch that. Yeah.
Sorry if I'm sounding like I'm getting a headache. I'm just fed up with all this internet and all this net neutrality fear-mongering.
It should be completely obvious to everyone, no matter how techie you aren't. It should be completely obvious how badly we need secure encrypted connections. For everything, for our credit card transfers, for our websites, for everything. And yet all these politicians are coming in, oh, no, we can't do that. That's going dark and the terrorists will win. It's like, oh, shut up.
Glad to see I'm not the only one in this entire hangout who's fed up with this crap.
Do y'all listen to any computer podcasts, Shane?
Computer podcasts, just in general?
Like computer security, anything like that?
Oh, security. Let's see. There's I think Security Now is a good one for people who aren't really all that technically minded, because Steve Gibson does that podcast and he's really good about boiling these things down and explaining it. There are some others, but they're really kind of techy. I mean, I understand the techie stuff, so that's one I'm drawn to. There might be a couple other good ones that are good at boiling it down to just to the regular layperson, but Security Now is really the only one I can think of, and that's one of my. I never miss that one. I
actually met Steve in real life. He's a pretty cool dude.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he seems cool. I mean, I've interacted with him on his news groups, especially trying to get all the squirrel stuff, finished up and out the door.
Oh, squirrel. That needs to happen soon. It's an amazing idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just need, because we know when it comes out, it's going to be, people are going to be reaming it. But I think when you see what we've come up with, everyone's going to be really pleased by this. The past 3 years have not been wasted. So.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know what Squirrel is, it's SQRL, Secure, Quick, Reliable Login. Forget usernames, forget passwords, forget all those second factors being texted a code and email recovery and stuff like that. No, all of that gets replaced with a system that from the ground up has been designed to be cryptographically secure. All you need is an app on your computer or your phone. You just click a link or scan a QR code and you're in. And it's that simple. You look at that and go, how can it possibly be that simple? You know, isn't security complex with all this extra stuff we have to do? Well, we have to do that way because passwords aren't secure. They never were. I mean, it was, you know, an idiotic thing to have all of our banking data be secured by a password. You know, what idiot thought of that? But that was just what everyone was always using. So
I just found something hilarious.
Maybe I could go on computer security with y'all.
I just found something hilarious. I haven't read through the entire article, but it's an article titled Left Voluntarism. Can voluntary taxation be progressive?
Is there such a thing as voluntary taxation? That's probably more of a semantic argument than anything.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's voluntary, what's the difference between that and donation or a fee for service?
Yeah. Yeah. And the real funny thing about it is not the part about the taxation, but the first paragraph, just the first paragraph. The particular model for the type of social order I wish to see is anarchist social democracy, which includes a voluntary taxation aspect. And I would like to elaborate on and defend this aspect of my anarchist theory here.
Sorry.
Can you give us the Teal version? What's he actually talking about?
One of those words does not belong in that phrase.
Can you Teal deer it for us and just give us the gist of what he's talking about?
So what it is that it's talking about having he wants to live basically in a having read through a little bit of it, basically something like a voluntary statist society, and the state is a democratic society which has taxes specifically focused upon being progressive taxes and being somewhat, and the society being somewhat socialisty in nature, but not completely.
If the taxation is voluntary, and if it's not a monopoly, then okay, sure.
Yeah. It's just kind of interesting. What do I?
That's probably, though, you were talking about, bad statist arguments. This is probably one of the worst ones. It's like, oh, monopolies are terrible, and so the solution is to have this monopoly called the state. It's like, you don't really see the problem here.
Yes, we have this terrible problem. We have all these monopolies. That's a terrible problem, and therefore we need to give the monopoly over the power to give monopolies to a monopoly.
Well, and you have Standard Oil, which had 90% of the oil market for a few years, and then it went down to like 60%. And that's a horrible monopoly. But when you have the monopoly of the school system, 6% of students are in charter schools. That's a horrible thing, and we need John Oliver to get on TV and rail about it.
Shane Killian, Shane. You're an evil monopolist. You have a monopoly over the industry of producing videos as Shane Killian.
Yep, that's true.
Kind of like how Chris has
a government monopoly
shooting his mouth off when we talked about that Las Vegas thing.
Well, it's like everything's a monopoly if you pare it down enough. I remember when DirecTV and Dish Network were trying to merge, they're trying to make it out to be a monopoly, even though they would have only had 17% of the multi-channel market. But what they were saying was it was 17% of the rural satellite multi-channel market in those two orbital slots, and therefore it was a minority. Well, God, how far are you paring it down?
Yeah. Like how I was talking to an economic teacher a few days ago. They were talking about monopolies, and then after the class, I told him, and he was talking about how if we don't have the competition, we need to break up the industry. And then I asked him how he was going to break up his teaching of economics class into different firms, because he was an evil monopolist over the industry of producing the good of him teaching economics class to students. And I don't know. He didn't answer the question, but
Ron Chapman's roasted us, boys.
Yeah, just
I'm still catching up in the chat. Sorry, everyone. There's a lot of things I've been pasting links over for the description.
But I mean, government is the ultimate monopoly, and it's an actual monopoly. Why don't people attack the government for being a monopoly?
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's like your power company, unless you live, somewhere like Pennsylvania where they actually have, even then, I think there are still some monopolies around. But I mean, it's just, it's like I've got Energy United, which sucks. There's Duke Energy, which granted is not much better, but all you would have to do is pass one law in the state of North Carolina, and then I can have the choice, and just having that choice would improve both of them. And the thing is, what is it? Article 1, Section 34, I think, of the North Carolina Constitution. I might have the section number wrong, but it specifically says perpetuities and monopolies are contrary to the genius of a free state and will not be allowed. But they're creating all these monopolies with, the power company, the cable companies, and things like that.
May I show what I've done with the channel art for it?
Sure.
Okay, let's see this right here. There we go.
Okay, we've got one problem in the, let me get you up there permanently, is that just at first glance, I couldn't read it, and that kind of made me not want to read it. So I'd probably not bother with the rainbow colors, just worry about a contrasting color between the text color, the outline, and the background. Make them so they contrast but don't clash. But I mean, you've got that rainbow there, and it's just like, when you see it from a distance, it's like, I don't want to try to read that.
Okay. Well, I'll continue to work on that. And
I'm also not sure, and this may just be a personal bias, but I'm really not sure how well script fonts work, in that. So I really like something kind of bold and maybe a little blocky.
Okay. I'll consider that.
The one I picked for Lord Killian is called Crypt Keep. I look around and found that, and it's nice. It's got character to it. It's got all those, squiggly little outlines to it, but it's also a nice, consistently bold font. And same with the Bogosity font, although I've been thinking about changing it. I mean, it's been 10 years, so maybe it's time for a change there. But it is, it's Bell MT bold, and so again, it's nice and bold and readable. So.
Hey, if it ain't
you do your own animation.
What's that?
Do you do your own animations, Shane?
Yeah. Can do all that.
Awesome.
And we got Ron Chapman and Savage Edith bickering in the chat. Oh, jeez. I'm sorely tempted to just jump.
Oh, he claims he's looked up my past, and you don't want to know. I think I've been pretty open about my past, probably a little more than I should be online, but there aren't a whole lot of secrets out there about me, whatever it is you think
what
you got.
What software do you use to create?
It's anything you think you discovered about me that's a secret, go ahead, tell it.
What software do you use for Lord Killian, the animation?
Well, for the background, I have been using a 3D Studio, and I've been taking some time lately to learn Blender, which is free, which is nice, so I can keep up to date. And I mean, they've really it's open source and it's free, but I mean, it is really good. It is easily up there with the big boys, with 3D Studio, with Maya, with Cinema 4D. It's easily up there. With that in, I mean, it's just really nice.
Is there a big learning curve for
There is. And see, I come at this from using 3D Studio, and the interface is really different. And I think the mistake I made at first was they have these options where, oh, you can set it up where all the keyboard shortcuts are like they are in 3D Studio and do the quad screen like in 3D Studio and stuff like that. And that was actually, I found, kind of a mistake, especially because when you're looking around on YouTube or whatever at all these tutorial videos, they're using it with the default settings. And so they're telling you to press this key or go to this place, and you've changed it all. And what I found was when I just decided to they've got this little thing like, reset to factory settings. So it's just like it's installed. I did that and I started working with it. And it's like, okay, I'm learning things the Blender way now. There was a learning curve, but it was better because it makes sense, in that context. So, but I mean, there's plenty of free resources. To me. There's plenty of free resources to go and learn about it.
Just seems overwhelming. I think I'll just stick to programming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a lot. If you've never done any 3D art before, then yeah, there's a lot to learn. But
yeah,
and there's that. And then to piece the Lord Killian videos together, what I do is I do the backgrounds and I render them, and then they're a layer in Vegas, and then Lord Killian himself, Friddle's artwork, is over that, and I just kind of have keyframes set up so he's kind of floating around over the top of it.
Oh, Shane.
So that's all done in Vegas.
Shane, little tip next time.
Yeah.
I accidentally stumbled upon your DeviantArt and dropped you a watch. Next time, tell me you have something so I can be in the loop, okay?
There's just not a lot there. There's just every now and then I'm like, oh, you know what? I should post that up on my DeviantArt. But I've put a lot of my video transcripts up there because I did have it up on my old blog, which hasn't been updated in many years. So I've been doing it in my DeviantArt journal. So.
And meanwhile, I've been doing sets like a mother. I've been doing sets on there like a mother. I mean, seriously. First set I've done was way back in 2015. So about three years after you started that Cot Bogosity thing. Sheesh. But in all seriousness, next time tell me.
Yeah, it's Shane DK on DeviantArt. I try to pretty much be Shane DK everywhere.
Yeah.
Although, what was it I was trying to sign up for? One of those other sites that's kind of like Patreon. And I wanted to use the Shane DK username. And they said, well, Shane DK is already taken. I was like, okay, I'll have to come up with another new username. Hey, who's Shane DK? And I went looking, there was no user Shane DK. And then I tried things like, S Killian, Shane.Killian, things like that, and it wouldn't take this. So I think it's a bug with the site. But
I think it's called Maker Support.
No, I'm on Maker Support. I'm Shane DK there. There was another one like it though that someone had recommended.
Speaking of animation stuff, is Flash pretty much dead at this point?
Adobe, I think, is like giving it until like 2020, and then they're officially killing it, and everyone is going over to HTML5.
Oh.
I think I came into Blender though at just the right time because I mean they've really done a good job with their cycles rendering engine and stuff. It's something called the Principles shader, which is, I mean, I could spend all day boring you about how awesome that shader is, but also there's something they're working on this year. They've got this thing called a grease pencil where you can just draw over the top of it. They're going to work on making grease pencil like a proper 2D animation that you can do along with it. So.
Oh, I know what we need. Animated, Libertarian ANCAP cartoons. That would be awesome.
Well, there's Freedom Tunes. Go check him out.
Yeah, Freedom Tunes is pretty good. Yeah.
Seamus is awesome.
Yeah, he also does some videos for the Foundation of Economic Education. I've seen some of those.
Yeah.
I'm talking like movies that just talk about different ideas and economics and stuff.
Sorry, there's just been so much going on in the chat, and I'm just kind of scrolling past most of it. A lot of people are just taking the Mickey there. All right, yeah. No one had a question or anything like that.
Oh, Christmas to the Hangout.
So there's speculation that Shane DK is my stage name in the gay adult film scenes. That's the kind of thing that's going on in the chat.
Wow.
There was actually one thing, because for a while I was Shane K back when there weren't all that many people on the internet, and turns out there are a lot of Shane K, so I stuck the D in there. But we started pronouncing it Shannick, and there were a couple of things. Like one thing, the Shannick sounds like a Vulcan, so I kind of had this Vulcan character for, this was the pre-YouTube days, but I had the Vulcan character for a while, and then someone said, you know, Shannick sounds like one of those 70s detective show, rough and tumble detective guys. And so we kind of came up with this character, Detective Sergeant Bart Shannick. And it would be in the fedora and the trench coat and all.
How widespread was libertarian thought during the early days of the internet?
Oh, it was everywhere. If the 2000 election had been on the internet, Harry Brown would have creamed them. I think libertarians are really first on the internet.
Yeah. I like to think of this as kind of like Sonic Forces. Where we're pretty much...
People are in the chat are misinterpreting, stuck the D in there. Ha ha, see?
This is a Mystery Science Theater 3000, guys.
Yeah, you people have perverted dirty minds. I love it.
Context.
Everyone has. It's just a matter of time.
At least I don't live in a country where everything is out to kill you.
There was this show back in the day called Three's Company, and basically, I mean, it was a good show. It was a sitcom, and I mean, it had normal sitcom-y things going on. It was pretty funny, but one of the kind of things they did over and over again was when someone is hearing, you know, one side of the phone conversation, or they're hearing it through a door and they can't see what's really going on, and it's something completely innocuous, but the way they're listening, it sounds like completely dirty.
Corp thinks you're Jack Tripper.
Shane is a male gigolo. Shane is a male gigolo for extra money. Now that won't work. No one would pay. No one would pay for this.
I think he meant to type in juggalo. I mean, we got juggalos in the chat now.
Jack Tripper, by the way, was the main character. Jack Tripper, by the way, was the main character in Three's Company, played by the late great John Ritter. Funny guy. Such a tragic loss. You know, 8 simple rules and
crying libtards says the Democrats of peace. Oh wait, wrong stream.
I was about to say, I think you're ahead of me on the chat. I haven't gotten to those yet.
Yeah. But robot algorithms as the next conspiracy theory will be that Shane is gay.
You know, I don't think anyone else is ever going to want to watch this hangout ever, but hey, we're having fun. So.
Yeah.
Yes, this is great. I changed the art. May I put it back up?
Sure, go for it.
I'm at it. And while ANCAP's doing that, Simon Petrov asks, hey Shane, when do you think anarchy will be achieved?
So it's a better font, but I mean, you know, you've got, I did like the way where it was just another ANCAP across on one line like that with a lot of white space around it. But yeah, that's definitely a better font.
Yeah. I still have that saved, so I'll continue to work on it. This is fun to listen.
Anything. Always save what you've done in stages so you can, go back. When do you think anarchy will be achieved? I have no clue. I am not the guy. I have no crystal ball.
Well, I have a question for you, Simon. When's Half-Life 3 gonna drop?
I'm not the guy to ask about gaming either.
It's a joke, Shane.
It was really just about a year ago when I got my new video card, real nice 8 gigabyte thing, and I mean it renders video like crazy.
556 Delta Wolf
really
says, still going strong.
Yeah, that's Chris.
I'm doing swell. Thanks for asking, Delta Wolf.
Chris. But anyway, it came with a free copy of Doom on Steam. And so I signed up for Steam, got my free copy of Doom, downloaded 77 gigs, never played it. Haven't had a chance to play it.
Oh, I played it. It's the most fun slaughtering demons I've ever had in my 20 years on this.
I mean, I played the original back in the day. Played it all the time. Played Quake. We played StarCraft all the time. I just don't really have that much time for it. And like I say, extra time I have now has been spent doing things like learning Blender. And
oh my god,
Shane,
the Gerber baby, a reptilian shapeshifter, and the
Kwanzaa zombie.
Keep them coming, David. Keep them coming. I'm
loving this. Zombie. That's a new one on me.
I am loving this, David. Keep them coming.
Yes, there are now all sorts of conspiracy theories about me, apparently.
Shane, your answer that you don't know when anarchy is coming, I think that's a very good answer. After having read through Omnipotent State by Ludwig von Mises, the very start of it.
Oh my God,
it talked about how the liberals in Germany ended up their power as a result of just expecting that even though they were failing in the short term, in the end, inevitably, the liberalism would succeed, and it didn't end up succeeding, and that was where their downfall came. I've watched some videos like Esoteric Entities video on how anarchy would be achieved. It says near the end that anarchy is basically inevitable. That type of concept, even if it's true, it doesn't even matter. If you act as if something is inevitable, it can be held back for nearly eternity.
I think like one of the things that can really help it happen, though, is with the new media. If we can break past, the corporate news media, which is very much in the back pocket of big government.
Ensemble Corps. Shane,
I think we're just going to have to mute our mics when we read the chat from now on. We'll be laughing too hard. But yeah, I mean, it's just the fact that, like, the net neutrality thing, that was a complete faux controversy. Most people, I mean, I even talked to people who thought the problem was we were going to have this thing called net neutrality and it was going to ruin things. I'm like, no. Net neutrality is what they're going away from. And it's just all this hysteria is completely artificial and completely generated by the news media. So, I mean, the more alternatives we get out there, I mean, the better it's going to be. There you are, Chris. How you doing?
Yeah, sorry, I fell asleep when you sent the camera. So
yeah, for the last 10 minutes, we got Chris Hangartner.
Oh, hey, it's Richie from It.
Oh, only the last 10 minutes. Oh.
Heather gets off work.
I just had to reference Stephen King.
Hell no, we're gonna pull an all-nighter, Shane.
Heather gets off work at 10. You guys can go into a chat without me or something. I'm off at 10.
Oh, jeez.
Well, I've got one quick question, Shane. Want to be a member?
One of us. We accept you, Gooba Gaba.
No, what I'm quoting is
Freaks.
It's an old. No, it's not Freaks. It's an old cartoon from Bimbo.
What I was.
Oh yeah, Max Fleischer.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I got the channel art right this time.
Well, I'm gonna ninja out and join a Trumpster stream.
That's definitely better. This isn't really something. This isn't really something.
Ninja. Vanish.
This isn't really something you're going to do a good job of in a couple of hours. I mean, it's just something you got to kind of work on. You got to kind of go and like get your mind off of it, take a break or something, then go back, take a glance at it, and ask questions like, "Where's the first place that your eye goes?" and what stands out and what doesn't. So,
I think that you should create a video about the new Shane Killian conspiracy theories.
I don't know. Does this chat get saved? Are people going to be like seeing that when they watch?
No, this chat doesn't get saved.
Oh. No, too bad. There's some great stuff there. I think we're all too busy reading the chat to actually talk about something.
Oh.
Even Chris has his mouth shut right now, and that's saying a lot.
Oh, well, that's because I didn't have time. Well, It's probably a good thing I got in this thing late. Otherwise, the entire stream would just be me ranting about how much The Last Jedi sucks ass.
Oh, we've already talked about that.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, it's so hilarious. Like, I've even seen people that love the Disney canon. They love The Force Awakens, and even they're walking out going, yeah, you EU fans are kind of right. That kind of sucked.
I think they just don't know what to do with it. They have no idea where to take it, where it's going to go, and they're just rehashing all the old stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, if we make a new Star Wars movie, we'll make a new Star Wars movie, we'll make money. So let's do that. What are we going to do? I don't know. Let's just do that again.
And it's pretty funny, Shane, because that really is the reason why I laugh when people say, well, they had to can the original expanded universe because it was for creative freedom. And I'm like, you're saying you can't take a comic book or a book and make it into a movie? That's not creative.
Yeah, I mean, they do it all the time. I mean, they even did that with Doctor Who. There was a Doctor Who novel called Human Nature, which was written for Sylvester McCoy's Doctor. They made it into an episode with David Tennant's Doctor. So, I mean, you know, stuff like that is absolutely doable.
Yeah.
Isn't 7, 8 Rogue One at least better than the prequels, though?
Yeah, Rogue One, I think. I still think the prequels are better just because there's still passion behind it, you know. For all their flaws, the prequels still have passion behind it. The new series, it's just like it's more like Disney saying, "Hey, look, it's got stormtroopers and space battles. Buy it, buy it, buy it."
Yeah, and I think with the prequels, I actually think The Phantom Menace was a lot better than a lot of people say. I mean, it wasn't a great movie, but I think they were potentially setting up for a lot of stuff. They just didn't follow through with it in the next two movies. I mean, it was kind of like The Matrix. The first Matrix movie was just awesome, and it's like one of the best movies ever made. And then the next two was like, they didn't know where they were going with that.
Hello there, Mr. Killian.
And I mean, it's like the other two, it was just kind of like going through the motions of getting from there to, you know, turning Anakin into Darth Vader. There were no real surprises along the way, you know? No twists.
Speaking of the Matrix, didn't the guys who directed the Matrix trilogy, didn't they become women now?
Yeah, they're both women.
Yeah.
Lana and Lily Wachowski.
Yeah, the Wachowski brothers and all the Wachowski sisters.
Yep. That's good. I mean,
Sense8, the rumor that Keanu wants to do
Sense8 is really good. Movie. That was done with the Wachowskis and J. Michael Straczynski, who did Babylon 5. That's really good. There's 2 seasons of that. Netflix didn't do a third season because it was like $80 million for the season, but they are going to let them do a movie to finish up the story. So, but it's really good. Check it out. SENSE #8 on Netflix.
Would the B1 battle droid be possible in the future? Oh yeah, because
it's possible now. It's a toy. You can buy it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's totally what I want when I go up to a restaurant and all that, and I tell them I'd like a Big Mac and a large soda, and then it just replies, "Roger, Roger." Okay, so what's the cost going to be? Roger, Roger. Hello.
Yeah, I mean, things like that, you're not going to have any just amazing AI for that. You're just going to go up. I mean, just a touch screen. Touch screens work. Big Mac fries, I want this, that. Yeah. Boom. And, you know, here's my credit card or crypto or, you know, Android Pay or whatever you're using. And then, you know.
You got to admit, Shane, about the Phantom Menace. Some of those droids were really funny, you know.
Yeah.
Like that one, you know, it's like I'm taking these people to Coruscant. Where are you taking them? To Coruscant. Coruscant. That doesn't compute. Hey, wait a minute. You're under arrest. Yeah.
How come Android Pay and Apple Pay haven't taken off yet?
You know, I gotta say, I've got Android Pay set up on my phone. And I keep thinking I'm using it. I just haven't used it. It's just I'm used to, you know, take the card, you know, slide it through or put the chip in. It's just what you're used to. You just kind of do it. I haven't really, you know, let me check out my phone and tap and see how this Android Pay works. I just haven't done it. I keep thinking, maybe I'll do it, but you know, you've gone through and you've got all the things, you've gotten checked out, and you just want to get home. Yeah, I'll just run the card.
Yeah, and one guy said he works in a theater, and he says The Last Jedi somewhat making a killing. Here's something interesting. See, The Last Jedi cost $20 million, $200 million to make. $200 million to make it. It's making back 60 million. Whereas I read somewhere that The Empire Strikes Back also made 600 million, but guess how much of a budget it had? 15 million. Just goes to show you don't need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a film, and that's actually partially why I nominated, Hollywood for Indie of the Year, simply because they're doing shit like that. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on a film that might be a blockbuster, and even then, it's only a blockbuster for a few months. So yeah, you break even, but you don't make any further profits and all that. It gets forgotten within the next year or so.
Ask Trek fans what the best Star Trek movie is. The one that constantly comes up to the top every time is The Wrath of Khan, and it's the one that had the lowest budget.
Yep.
Because after that massively expensive fiasco that was Star Trek the Motion Picture, the studio wasn't willing to risk a whole lot on a second one, so they limited the budget, but they made something really good.
A lot of people say the first Star Trek movie wasn't bad. It's just that it was trying too much to be like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Well, if you talk about the art of filmmaking, oh man, it is perfect. Everything is beautiful. Everything's nicely done. The effects are great. The imagery is great. All of the technical and artistic stuff is great, but there's a difference between the art of filmmaking and the storytelling of filmmaking, and the storytelling is where they fell flat.
Yeah, yeah, David Stewart, even though he sadly, fell for the copyright, bullshit, he does make some good videos about, movies and all, and he does say that's one of the reasons why a lot of movies just don't feel like movies anymore. And he pointed this out with the new Star Wars. The biggest problem with the new Star Wars and a lot of modern movies in general is just that their stories make no sense. There's no rhyme or reason, Well,
it's like Ridley Scott. I mean, compare The Martian to Prometheus. If you give Ridley Scott great material, he'll do great things with it, like on The Martian. If you give him crap, like with Prometheus, he will give you beautifully, artfully rendered crap. That turd will have so much polish it'll gleam. It's still a turd.
Yeah. It's pretty funny because Mark Hamill, the actor who played Luke Skywalker, he's a very good actor, very underrated, and from what I've heard, he does a good job in The Last Jedi, but I feel really, really bad for him, because it's like, I can only imagine internally what he's thinking, because he's made it pretty clear he does not like The Last Jedi, and he hates how Luke Skywalker got portrayed in the new canon.
And it must suck to be that closely associated with such an iconic character. I mean, that limits the other roles you'll be able to take in trying to break out of that. Yeah. Harrison Ford was able to do that because he also had, Indiana Jones and all of these other successful films to get him going. So he was able to do there and go on to great things like The Fugitive and all those other great movies.
Yeah, and the thing is, going back to what Mark Hamill said, he said in an interview, he said he was talking to both J.J. Abrams and later Rian Johnson, or Rian, or however it's pronounced, and he told people, can I give a little creative input? I mean, I've been playing this character since 1977. I know him almost as well as George Lucas originally did in there, and he basically said, and they more or less said, okay, Mark, just give us a few notes and then go sit in your corner and we'll call you if we like them, and that's what it was.
Here's what you have to understand as a director or a producer or anything like that. You've got all sorts of things to think about. You're thinking about the characters, you're thinking about setting, you're thinking about the shooting, you're thinking all of that. The actor only has to think about their character, and so they've put a lot more thought into their character than you have. And I know the times that actors have said to me, it should be this way, and it's like, okay, we'll try it your way, and they've been right. They've had a better concept of the character than I did.
I mean the stereotype of the stubborn actors tend to be the best ones. There's a little bit of truth beyond that. The ones that are always saying, hey, no, my character wouldn't do this, he'd be doing that. Those tend to be the good ones.
Well, not the real divas, like, you must shoot me from this side and my dressing room has to have caviar and stuff like that. Yeah. Not that, but the artistic input of this is how I see the character. This is how things are do. Yeah. Listen to your actors when they tell you those things.
Oh yeah. Fun fact, that's actually the reason why Clint Eastwood and John Wayne never starred in a film together, because I've actually heard there was this big cowboy film back in the late 60s that they wanted to do, and they wanted Clint Eastwood and John Wayne to do it, but the reason why it never got shot was because John Wayne and Clint Eastwood couldn't stand each other, because Clint Eastwood was more like, kind of like what we would call the rogue gunfighter, in that, he was good, but he did fight dirty, whereas John Wayne loved to portray cowboys as these heroic, basically, Wild West knights, that had a code of honor, whereas Clint Eastwood's characters, like I said, were more like practical. It's more like if there's a guy trying to kill you and he's like in the tub taking a shower or a bath, you shoot him when he's vulnerable, and John Wayne's like, no, that's not noble for a hero to do.
But, I mean, that kind of thing can work because you have characters coming from two different aspects that can give you conflict between your protagonists.
But in the end, John Wayne wanted nothing to do with it. Yeah, according to rumor, he was in one movie role, and there was I don't know if it was true grit, but it was they wanted his character to shoot a guy in the back, and John Wayne was like, no, he can't do that. That's dishonorable. And one guy's like, come on, Clint Eastwood would do it. And he's like, I don't care what Clint Eastwood does.
By the way, the remake of True Grit, the Coen brothers did. Excellent movie, and it is 10 o'clock, so that means I'm about to turn into a pumpkin. So
okay,
I
thought you're the one who's supposed to put your wife in a pumpkin shell.
Yeah,
I was right. Yeah, before I got on here, I was listening to a top 10 dark origins of famous nursery rhymes, and Peter Pumpkin Eater. Guess what? He didn't build his wife a home out of pumpkins. Basically, according to the original story, it's heavily implied he caught her cheating, he killed her, burnt her, and then stuffed her ashes in a pumpkin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how dark some of those nursery rhymes have.
Oh, yeah.
Fun fact, a lot of modern nursery rhymes that we sing to children, they're actually allegories for the prosecution of various religious groups during the English Civil War, when the Catholics and the Protestants were constantly taking power over each other and then enforcing, barbaric laws on each other. The Catholics would take over and say, okay, you got to be Catholic or else we're going to brutally kill you. And then the Protestants would take over and say, now you got to be Protestant and we'll brutally kill you.
All right, so let's wrap it up. Thanks to Chris Hangartner. We got Darth. We got Pip. We previously had Johnny P. Just another ANCAP. Who else do we have? I think that was it. So thanks everyone for participating, and thanks to your support. And we'll do another Patreon hangout next month, and hopefully I'll find the time to do some more in the interim where we can just invite people in from the Discord and have complete chaos. So
okay, that'd be fun.
All right.
See you guys.
Bye, everybody.
See ya. Stay strong and be free.